of the speaker. So today's talk is quick, solid, and automatic OpenStack Baremetal orchestration. With me is Rico Lin. He's on the TC, and I believe you're the Heat PTL?
Yeah.
And I'm the Ironic PTL, which is a project for Baremetal management. So I guess we should get started. So when you think about Baremetal, there's a lot to think about. It's almost like you're running a nuclear power plant. And someone might have an obsession with The Simpsons.
Well, I like Simpsons.
So, but if you think about it, you have to manage the network infrastructure. You have to manage how you even cable the machines, the power that you're connecting the Baremetal machines to the logical networks, to every layer upwards you have to think about. So it does become a huge amount to think about, which is why we invented OpenStack Ironic, and this bear comes to this story today. And when you create an instance on Ironic, in Ironic, or to use Ironic, normally most users create an instance using Nova through the OpenStack server create command, which internally calls Ironic and says, I want to create a Baremetal server. But you do that with the flavor Baremetal or custom flavor in your environment. You may not know that you're asking for Baremetal machines. It has to be configured for the flavor and for the Ironic deployment. So it's very easy to start thinking about how this becomes complex and how much of a pain this can become. Because you're assembling your infrastructure, you decide you want to build a grill, and you end up with a pile of cinder blocks and concrete and Homer Simpson being very frustrated. But it's very easy to get started, at least from a standpoint of being a developer or trying to roll out your own environment to manage Baremetal. The first link is a link to the multi-tenant documentation how to install DevStack, which is the tool we use to install and do OpenStack development for the most part in the OpenStack community. And we have two settings that usually help people to get started. The first is to disable cleaning of machines. Do not run this mode A in production. Cleaning is a mode to scrub the disks of content so that you don't have data from previous tenants. But if you're developing, it's fine to turn off. And Ironic is hardware. That's a flag for to tell Ironic or the DevStack plugin that is not being run against physical machines. Normally, Ironic creates virtual machines for you to use. There's some other ways. One can use Helm charts, and I believe these are sample Helm charts. But ultimately, there's also the OpenStack Baremetal command, and you use that to interact with Ironic. To create an instance in Ironic or deploy a node from Ironic, you have to walk through a sequence of steps, which really starts from creating the node, creating the ports, moving and manipulating the node power state, starting inspection, which is an optional step to gain more information about the machine. And then ultimately, you provide the node to that pool of active resources, which can be deployed. And then you always end up with the OpenStack server create, at least if you're using Nova. And this becomes a very complex workflow. Because you have the Nova API, you have the Ironic API, you have databases, you have a vert driver as part of Nova. You have Neutron, Glance, and all the interactions that are inside Ironic too, being hidden by Nova, which ends up in a very complex workflow. And if you start adding automation to it, you end up with Heat and Horizon and possibly every other OpenStack component out there. But you can simplify your environment. If you want to run diskless Baremetal as a service, you can use Cinder. You don't need to have physical disks in your servers. If you have local disk storage and you just want to use Neutron, no Nova, you can do the same. You don't even need Glance. You can actually tell Ironic to deploy an image from a web server or file on the Ironic server. And ultimately, that means you can deploy most systems with just Ironic, which makes it a very powerful tool in a standalone environment. So we end up moving from OpenStack Server Create to deploying for deploying Baremetal machines to OpenStack Baremetal or Metalsmith Deploy, or using Ansible modules. So we go from a state diagram, a connection diagram that looks something like this, to a command that directly interacts with the services. And now you can automate your cluster with Heat.
So thanks, Julia. So I think a lot of people here already knows a lot about the Ironic, and so there's one question we can throw to you guys. So it's Ironic. So we just show you can like do the simplified version of your OpenStack. That means that you in cases you actually don't need Nova. If you think about that, and you actually in cases you don't need Cinder or some service as well if you don't want it. Um, but still, if you want some services, for example, we want to using Heat, is it actually work with Ironic directly, or is there something that we have to do? That will be we're trying to find out the answer for you. So for who don't know about Heat, Heat is orchestration services in OpenStack. You basically put in the YAML like this, and you create the resources you want, and with the dependency and with other alternative, with other advantage you can use. So, so if you prefer, it can be look like this. The fire is the Heat mascot. So, well, I like this. So, so if we think about what we have here, we have Ironic to do the master to the entire things, and right now in this world, since we're trying to say we are going to simplify, which is also a long-term working visions, we are trying to approach that. We want to have. We're thinking about if it will be reasonable to have Heat as well in this place. But we don't want to say because I'm working at Heat, I want to add a Heat here because it look cool, the bear with fire. But we want to make sure that things actually working and it makes sense, right? Or otherwise, we should keep other things as well. We should keep Nova. We should keep everything here, and still asking you to install everything in your OpenStack. So, so how's that going to work? Like so why we even mention like Heat here is that because there's we're going to go through like trying to go through like each one of them and trying to show you how that is an advantage, and we're trying to compare that with using virtual machines and using bare metals. That's the whole point of this session is about things get different when we're talking about bare metal and VNs, and tell you what the upstream is upstream's working, and try to give you some hope we can give you some reference of the user's use case. And so in case I didn't meet, let me go through from the batch schedule. So the batch schedule is simple. It's basically if you're using Heat, you can use Heat with inside your YAML file, you can define how much you want to run at a time, how you're going to delete, how much you want to delete at a time, and how much you want to update and create. And by doing so, that means that you can actually like creating 10 bare metals nodes at a time, and but not trying to like creating too much, and the to have multiple step into one. That basically what the if you see from the previous slides, we the bare metal is very complex. If you run without ironic, and with ironic, you still have some step to do, and you don't want to make you want to make sure that those steps are correct. Otherwise, you might do some mess up things with your bare metal nodes, and you'll get more crazier if you adopt ironic with Nova, and there's like a use cases you might actually have some conflict like happens in the database of Nova or the database of ironic. Yeah, that would might just happen, and there's also template to reuse that. It's very simple point. Just to you can using Heat to have your YAML template directly and without trying to redoing everything by yourself. Like you have your own Heat YAML files. You can reuse that in your another cloud. Multi-cloud structure we will show you by diagram. That will be more clear, and autoscaling and self-healing as well. So let's start it by the very first thing we need to do is we need to make sure the ironic do have services in Heat. That that is not that is not something that you have in the even in the current branch of your OpenStack, because we used to in the community we used to think that why not just using Nova, using the virtual machine flow for your ironic. That makes sense. But since like a few years ago, I mean like 2 years ago, the bare metal becomes more get more attention on it, and people figure that out that it makes absolutely no sense that you're trying to ask all the bare metal behave like a VM. Uh, for example, if you using a VM, you will be feeling so comfortable when Nova trying to reset your VMs based on the Nova database. That will make sense, but it probably won't make sense when Nova depends on the database and trying to ask a bare metal node to shut down, because in the database it says the node should be shut down, and that that will be like it will be very hard to maintain your bare metal node. But anyway, the first step we have to make sure that we're talking about connect these two projects with Heat and Ironic, and the first thing we need to do is have the resource out, so you can actually using the Heat template to control your Ironic resources. And but right now, though we are not yet implemented, but all the implement patch is already up there in Gary. We welcome everybody to review if you want it, and to make sure that we are covering user scenarios which you have. And I hopefully that the feature will be landed at the early cycle. Let's hope. So basically, there's a three kind of a resource is at the first stage. The first kind is like Julia says, the ironic node need to set out a port, and the port might directly to to a specific port that you have to run on, and the bare metal allocations will be you have to sign out your bare metal settings to a specific node and lock it, and the deployment will be actually do the deployment to actually deploy out the nodes. Like Julia, do you like to like have better like refresh people how the workflow goes?
So when you deploy Baremetal machine, if I'm Nova and I'm acting as Nova, what I would do is I set a lock on the machine. I update the port objects to include a VIF attachment, which is basically a neutron port, and then I supply the information of what to deploy to the machine. In most cases, that is an image, and usually the type of image or extra metadata about that gets posted from Glance or that has been supplied. Usually, it actually would always be Glance in the Nova case. That might also be a Swift URL. At that point, Nova tells Ironic, go deploy. From that point forward, Ironic runs the deployment for that machine.
Yeah, so you see that's more clear version than I have. So that's why she's a Nova. She's the Ironic PTO, and I'm not. But you see that, so that's exactly the flow applies that we're trying to apply here, and hopefully that the implement we have in heat is a is a nice choice with Ironic directly. So so if we like to help you to using Nova with Ironic in heat, you just directly using the Nova server resource type in heat. So that's not the point we're trying to do and hopefully landed in this cycle. So the point we have here is that this new resource is not going to trying to target anything that apply Nova workflow. It's just pure Ironic, as pure as it can. So as long as that people just using Ironic, it should work. If it's not, that we should fix that. So like what Julia mentioned about the entire workflow, and now we take out the Nova part and we have we like usually like introducing glance here, and for the case that being introduced, we also using volume, the single volume and neutron. So and this is actually all the resources type you need. If you want to construct your ironic node group, I mean like if you want to create a bunch of node within within send for your send applications, uh, for one node and for 10 nodes, the script looked like exactly the same. It, except for there's a number you have to change from 1 to 10, which is the autoscaling group counted. But the rest part is actually not that much difference. Um, and by the way, the glance web image is replaced. It's sorry. It replaced the old glance image resource type because this is for the very new version of API, and the other one is it's deprecated and not working, which is V1. So this is V2 and it's new. So use glance with web image, not using the image. It will be it will not be that long term intended, and which probably plan to remove it. But anyway, the important part is that you see the ironic part that we're trying to have. Since we have a neutron port and we have ironic port to define the physical MAC address port to link it, and then we have the allocations to define the metadata of the Baremetal node, and we have actually deployed the node. Uh, and that was the resource, and now let's go to the point of the multi cloud support. So since the last version, I mean since 10, now is we just released trend, but since then, he got the capability to have multi cloud support. And why we mentioned here in the in Nova, I'm sorry, in Ironic and the Heat integrated because for our cases, for some of our use cases, we've been encountering that their bare metal node is across multiple places, not because their cloud is big. It's only because their clouds need two different structure. Because when we're talking about multiple nodes, that means actual server usually, and the actual server needs space, need place, and not everybody got the data center. So in this case, that we introduce you about the heat multiple node support, and it's actually very simple stuff. The only services you need is Barbican, and the Barbican will be to store your secrets, and your secret will be the secret to for you to access to another of your OpenStack cloud. And if you have your secret stored in the current cloud, and you can using that secret in your current cloud and feed that into your heat, and the heat will help you to create another heat stack in another cloud, which means that the workflow actually will be exactly the same when you're trying to create a stack in your local, and everything will be in just one template. So the template looks exactly the same. Just you just have to change your Barbican secret. The reason that we have using Barbican secret is because we have a lot of discussions with security SIG to make sure that we're making the most reasonable uh, uh, working and implementations. Though it might looks like we're doing something to create more services to introduce more burden to you, but for security reasons, that you should not feed your cloud credential to just anyone. You the credential going to be able to create the the OpenStack service, the resource in another cloud. Uh, if anyone can just decrease the credential and get it, and the only safety place will be in Barbican, in my opinions, or some place that get provided similar functionality, which definitely not should not be in heat. And in the case with Baremetal, probably should not be ironic service as well because it's secret. So uh, maybe the other thing will be aid or other support, but for now we from heat perspective we want to focus on Barbican directly. So uh, the the uh, the last thing I want to say about this feature will be uh, first you don't need any specific uh, the setup to your other cloud. You just have to have the secret, which inside the secret will probably just the keystone URL, the password, the admin, the whatever the user you want to use to create a stake, and the when the heat stake get the secret, you will be able to create in a multiple place. So let's go with some actual user case study. Not actual user, I mean actual use case study to see if that actually like can be fulfilled with the now we're trying to say about heat and ironic. The auto scaling features, if you go from like a diagram, it will look like you have to monitoring your bare metal, and then you get the meterings, then you will be able to learn, then you will be able to ask your heat to trigger the ironic to do the scaling, scale up or scale down. Now, the uh, the entire flow looks like there's exactly the same as the virtual machines, but things get different because what you are actually monitoring is your bare metal, and we actually now have a lot of place to monitor. Like if you are inside your service, like if you are using OpenStack without changing anything, you probably already metering a lot of stuff, which including all the Nova VNs, including all your single variants, including maybe your even your guns and other whatever you can metering. So if you want to like keep scaling, and right now you have to monitoring a lot of your bare metal nodes. Oops. Where is my size? But well, I probably will mention later. But sorry. But the important thing is that you have to choose what you're metering. You have to choose what you're going to monitoring. And for our case is we're trying to integrate all the monitoring services into just one. So if you have no judgment or say good or not, but if I have only one, like say I don't know, Noki and 8, and that might you might consider to just using that. But now that the power plant your power plant is in ironic, what you're going to do? So turn off those metering you're not going to use, even though it might make sense that you can monitor in multiple places for your ironic node, for your physical nodes, that always turn off extra monitoring. That is the tip. I'm pretty sure I will have more slides about that later. And now we're talking about self-healing, and the self-healing will be very similar. You have to metering what you have, and once the physical node is down, that you have to trigger a learn and the workflow in OpenStack. There's a Mistral services about providing workflow, and if you're using the workflow, you will be able to trigger a service like Heat to do a state update to mark those unhealthy node away, and Heat will help Ironic to bring up your node again, which the node might be just brand new. But so the things that we are talking about these features in this entire Ionic Heat, because for me is we have a bare metal node is down, which is very bothering people, and the trying to have an actual way to heal the nodes and to see what exactly happened in the node is very important. You might find a lot of current fancy softwares to mention they can just kill something and bring something up, but the thing is that some service is just too complex to just delete it and then bring up the node again. You have to find out what might be the reason. That's why you need something services and some mechanism like using workflow. And this entire mechanism will work directly, because the Ironic actually don't need to do too much efforts about maintaining the entire healthy check of your Ironic Baremetal node. Uh, there's other service can help with that, and Heat will be only play the role by accept other people to make the Ironic service. I'm sorry, Ironic the node resource unhealthy, and then trying to recreate it trying to recreate the node in the stack, which if you think about the entire workflow and the entire healing process, it's just inside your Heat service resource definitions. So you don't need to do the hacking things across multiple of your physical nodes to even try to find out what might go wrong, what is going wrong, and how you're going to fix that. They are capable to do standard fixing, and then you bring up the node again, then the service will be exactly the same. There's also some great mechanism you can consider to use, which like you can using in Heat to predefine to do some rechecking before before you uh, before you want to replace a node, because like what I said, some software is very complex to directly went down, and you have to try to make sure when you're trying to delete the service, the inside your inside your Ironic bare metal node, you do it the right way as you define the application. So Sunlink is a service that doing the autoscaling, but Sunlink has a great mechanism like the software deployment in Heat, which is you can access to the node and trying to do the checking with your Ansible script or with your Bash script, and then maybe trying to make sure all the application on top of the bare metal node is at the right state to shut down before you replace it. And the reason I mentioned Sunlink uh, is because what the sensing happens in Heat. Oh, here's my slide. I'm sorry, but let me let's go through that, and oh, you'll be back. Don't worry. Oh, wait, we also back going back. So the thing is that I mentioned this Sunlink here because I'm not going to say yes, everything here is ready for you, because it's not. And we have to show you where the part is not, so you can avoid using it. And the first part is not is like what I say. You have other things above there inside your bare metal node for your applications. But right now that the heat services only allowed to using Nova server resource type to actually do the software config and software deployments, which is a mechanism using a hook to access to your node and to trying to provide metadata and let the node do run some commands like Ansible, like Kubert control, like Bash script. So unfortunately, that is not ready to for when you're saying you want to directly using Ironic and Heat even nowadays. And there's no patch to fix that yet. I plan to fix it, but the things that we're doing here is we're trying to find out where we are mixing, and that is definitely a part that you don't want to use it when using Heat with Ironic. And so yeah, we can go back. Whew. Yeah. Sorry, that's me doing the workflow. So, oh my fault. So the thing that like what we mentioned, the thing that there's something you don't care, you don't want to monitoring, and there is actually very important stuff. Why I mentioned here because I have facing users to years ago I facing users to tell me that okay they are using Nova and Ironic, but the thing is that they think the entire performance is bad, and they they don't want to keep using the entire flow because they are when they're using VNs, they think everything works, and when they migrate to Ironic with Nova, they find everything is so slow. But that's not possible in cases because we're using bare metal to actually take over the entire node, so it should not be slow. So when I look into the user environment, I find out like what I mentioned. There, the user actually doing a lot of a check to their bare metal node, which might be okay when the hypervisor when you're using Nova with VN, the hypervisor do all the check, and the hypervisor help to optimize the checking to pulling the meterings, and the hypervisor will be so easy to check on all the node on the on that hypervisor without consuming too much your performance. Uh, if you optimize your hypervisor, but in the bare metal case, you are need to know that whatever you're trying to see in the bare metal, you have to you have to ask services like Ironic to pre-store those stat in a place, or you have to directly go through the internet to go into the node and get those metering data, which the user choose the second ways, and their entire network looked like crazy, a lot of connections and keep failing, retry. So that's why I mentioned here. Maybe not the case for everybody, but there are things you have to be careful. And I'm pretty sure you guys already saw the following slide. Uh, so the batch should be considered if that applies because we have like heard a lot of a use case like feedback from users as well. Um, Not necessarily to be something with bare metal, but also with VN as well. When you're trying to create a lot of stuff in OpenStack, that the monitoring will be a thing. Uh, but the when you trying to create at the same time, let's think about the scenarios when you're trying to create a hundred volumes at a time, and you send all the 100 API to your sender. If your sender is not that like high performance server or you not like optimize your network, I'm pretty sure 100 API creation API flow at a time will definitely create very high burden of your environment. And in cases I saw that the entire environment just crashed because You want the orchestration tool to help you to create nodes at a time, or you want to update like five nodes at a time, or 15 nodes at a time. But you don't use batch because you don't care if those jobs are failing or not, or you don't care if those jobs are increasing the burden of your environment or not. So that's that's what I'm encouraging you to using batch in heat, and so you can like create. Okay, we can now we have like 10 bare metal nodes. We have like 10 volumes with it, and we have one glance image with it. Let's create like two of those nodes at a time, and give some rest of of your environments, like for example a few seconds, or it depends on the job is complete. Then we resend another two to start it. In this way, unless you might fail earlier, because once the first two is not able to success, you don't have to stop all the 10 Cinder APIs and 10 Baremetal APIs to stop everything, which those canceling APIs will also increase the chaos in your environment, because uh, if you're using hypervisor, if you want to create 10 nodes, and if you're lucky, you only got one hypervisor, all the 10 nodes in single hypervisor, and the command might becomes simpler. But if you want to create the bare metal node, and you actually trying to create and cancel all those bare metal nodes at a time, the physical nodes means it's a physical infrastructure, and that means your entire physical hardware will get the attack, which you are the attacker. So keep that in mind. That is something that, and that's even crazier if you think about it. You create at a time. Good luck. So so you want to go this side? Okay, yeah, she's nice. So there's groups that you can engage with. The first group you can engage with is TC and UC. They are technical committee and user committee. And there are ironic teams here, the ironic PTL and the HIT PTL, and other you can engage with other teams. And there is a bare metal SIG that we encourage you to share your story, your user story, or whatever the feedback you would like to provide. And there's auto self-healing SIG and auto scaling SIG. And the reason we're showing you all this, because the conclusion will be there are still scenarios that we cannot fulfill if you're using heat and ironic. That is not the ideal solution. When I start to investigate, but it turns out yes, there are still things that we cannot achieve, like the software deployment things, which we need to push the community to get through, to actually get everything ready. And also we have to testing. We have to make sure everything is not just ready, but the test job, the cross-gating job should be there, which the siege is helping to push that. But we need people actually. So join and yeah. So maybe we can start by asking: is there any questions? Yes. Yeah, don't worry, Zach.
So, thank you. I would like to know, you talked about multi-cloud stack deployments via Heat. I would like to know what's the mechanism used for authentication, because you have to be authenticated in one cloud with the user, and I would like to know how does Heat authenticates with the other clouds. Do you need variables and keystone endpoints? How does it work?
So yeah, sorry, very good question. So although that's not the most important ironic part, but that's a very good point, because the mechanism is you have your own credentials. Like what I say, your credential could be application credential, which is very useful, newly introduced keystone feature. So there's also could be other credential. The answer will be we're using keystone to authenticate other place, but we're not using the keystone on our side. We're just asking he to trigger a REST API to the other heat. And yeah, so things getting very simple here, right? And the things that we will ask you if you would like to make sure that it's a secure link. So if you have your CS cert, that we encourage you to provide a CS cert instead of doing the while unsecure connection. And at the point that you just using the REST API to trigger a heat stack create in another place. So since we're using the current structure, we're not trying to reinventing anything, and which makes the simple become something that important, because now we can actually using this mechanism to connect to almost every single OpenStack cloud. Like whatever cloud you can connect with your REST API, and the other clouds also capable to know what is multi-cloud, which you just have to update the version, and then everything just work. And the mechanism is exactly the same way when you're trying to create nested stack in your stack, in your heat services. So the same way, just provide a keystone secret in the Barbican, and provide the Barbican ID to your heat. Then everything just work. Yes. Thanks. I think we run out a lot of. Sorry, we run out of time. That's yes, definitely.
The question was, what is the biggest drawback to using Nova to manage Ironic? It comes more down to, if you're using Ironic directly and you have a fleet that you're orchestrating, so say that you know what's in your data center. You know you have 100 machines and only 100 machines. You're able to better define that and map that and have that possibly represent the architecture that you need in that environment. Whereas when you start adding layers of abstraction through the compute API, you start losing a lot of that ability to articulate more precise details. Thank you.
Thanks.